Alright, we're back with more college football coverage, and in this one, I'll be covering all the Week 14 action, affectionately known as Rivalry Week. You know, sitting down, having a great time around family, friends potentially, and other, I guess, somewhat like-minded individuals. Getting some grub, watching some good sports, and in certain households, in certain places, rooting against the team of your person. Tensions can get pretty high in these situations, of course. But only one team at the end of the day, especially as we get closer and closer to the CFP, only one team can come out victorious. And depending on whatever team that might be in a given rivalry, could have major implications emanating from said game. In a wide variety of weird, wacky ways, and potentially dangerous ones as well. But all of that could be avoided if, literally, all that is hanging in the balance. And solely rests on what a team that might not know these people specifically does on a football field. Can be wild, but such is the allure of college football. And to get the festivities started, gonna have it in a condensed fashion, but we'll start out with Georgia and Georgia Tech. Number 4 Georgia Tech versus number 23 Georgia Tech versus number 4 Georgia. This was in a neutral site, so I guess it's really in the eye of the beholder when thinking about who had the home game here. Georgia's probably the more popular team in that area for good reason, and they've accomplished a lot recently, so I could see if it was flooded with Georgia fans, how that would be the case. But nevertheless, it's taken place pretty much at the apex of NFL action in Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. So, that's fair. Also going to be the site of the SEC championship game. Oh, that'll be relevant. But as far as this game goes, even without watching a single second of it, unfortunately, this went about as I expected. Georgia Tech is not a slouch of a team, and whenever, aside from maybe a few times past years per se, where Georgia Tech just got their asses kicked, for the better part of this time, they've been able to keep things somewhat competitive between the two. I mean, do we not understand that there was literally an 8 overtime game between these two squads the last time they matched up against each other? So, no, Georgia Tech wasn't going to get blown out of the water. They were going to fight for theirs, don't get me wrong. But this ultimately felt like a battle that Georgia would win, just off of the core of their team alone. And that is exactly what ended up happening. But in more of a downtrodden fashion, this was a pure form of a defensive struggle. It did not look pretty for the Georgia offense at all, especially with Gunnar Stockton throwing an interception on the very first drive of the game. But even when the rare mistake was made, and even when teams had chances of establishing momentum in this one, outside of Georgia pushing the lead up to 13-3 with a touchdown and field goal on back-to-back drives, there wasn't really a lot of that going on. You want to talk about offense? I mean, I encourage it, because these teams themselves could not generate nearly enough, especially Georgia Tech. You get two gritty defenses out on that field going at it, and it can always make for a game of this kind. But Georgia's defense, by simply sticking to their core strength and forcing Haynes King to be placed in some vulnerable decision-making situations, they ended up getting the advantage there. Georgia Tech did not score a single touchdown. And, in fact, let's check this out. Because it's not to say that on some of these drives, they weren't getting down the football field. But at every key moment, the Bulldogs were able to get the upper hand. And that's exactly what a game like this comes down to. Did Georgia Tech have a chance? For damn sure. But even that chance was thwarted by Georgia's efforts to literally keep them as submissive as possible and completely at bay to go out and win the ball game. The triple option ass team, they could not fool the Bulldogs this time around. Feels like Kirby Smart definitely learned his lesson from last season. Like, this was not a team that you really needed to duke it out with like that. And while they found themselves in a struggle compared to last year's game, they were able to limit the mistakes. I know Georgia in that game, even with their high-scoring offense, man, they served up some great opportunities to that Georgia Tech defense as well. And vice versa. Like, they were throwing all across the yard in that game, making shit work. Not this time around. As simple as that. And thus, Georgia will win the game 16-9, securing their spot in the conference championship game for the SEC with this one as well. For the numbers, Gunnar Stockton. I mean, they didn't have to rely on Gunnar Stockton too much. Had 70 passing yards, a touchdown and an interception on 3.3 yards per attempt, and on 52.4% completion from the field. Definitely, for a guy who had been making strides to get back into the Heisman race, that is definitely not the best showing in the world. But at the same time, did they need it? No. I mean, what they ended up doing on the ground, 190 yards on 46 carries, being led by Nate Frazier Jr., who had 16 rushes for 108 yards, and literally beating Georgia Tech at their own game, too, seeing as the Yellow Jackets had just 70 rushing yards on the ground and 3.2 yards per carry with half the rushes. Georgia was able to bleed through the clock so much, especially as the game waned on. And when you can do that, anytime you can do that, you're going to give yourself the benefit in said game more often than not. On the flip side, Haynes King had 181 yards on 70.4 yards per carry, 70.4% completion and an interception, along with 39 rushing yards, while Canyon had 4 receptions for 54 yards to lead the game overall. Meanwhile, two players in Lightsey and Daniels had 10-plus tackle days, with Daniels also adding a TFL. All right, moving on to number 3, Texas at number 16, or number 3, Texas A&M versus number 16, Texas. Wow. Undefeated season on the line, and an easy berth in the conference championship game was in the line of sight for Texas A&M. It was right there for the taking. Right there. I think a lot of people had little hopes for the Longhorns at all to go out there and win this one. And I would even be in that same, of that same thinking. Because there's just no way that this team, who undeservedly is still within striking distance for the CFP, manages to give the Aggies their only loss of the first season. There's no way that happens. And shockingly, even without watching it live, even though it was on ABC and I wanted to watch it, they got the fucking job done and pulled off pretty much one of the bigger upsets of the season, I should say. Of course, you're getting ranked on ranked action. We got to account for other games outside of that as well. I mean, hell, even when you look at Penn State losing to UCLA, for instance, like that would definitely be eons bigger. But within context, it's one of the craziest things that it could have gone down at this time of the year for both of these teams. I mean, the game itself, from what I was tracking, like, it did start off as a little bit of a defensive stalemate, and then gradually we started to pick it up. But Texas A&M, from their perspective, man, they got out to a late lead in the first half and had the advantage at halftime, but just cooled off tremendously as an entire offense. And it's crazy. Like, with the amount of weapons that they have, and with what they consistently offer on a game-to-game basis as a collective, for them to be held to this output of just 17 points, and in terms of total yardage, yeah, they still managed to pick up at least a net of 337. But, man, the way they'd been performing, they'd shoot high above those numbers. And it ensured that Texas, no matter what they were doing on their front, like, they were still only left at a field goal at this point. This could have gotten worse for them if not for their defense picking it up as well. Granted, they had some guys recently come back from injury, and it didn't really start off going all that hot. But Texas was still in a position where they could work their way back into some conversations if they managed to somehow, some way run the table. And while that didn't happen, man, the efforts of their defense and their entire mode of play in this fourth quarter, it proves to you, or at least makes a little bit of a case for them as why they deserve to get in. I mean, I'm tracking this thing. It looks like the Longhorns are out of it for just a point, just a second. And then they managed to rip off 3 touchdown drives. Just like that. In at least 4 possessions. Like, just madness. Ryan Wingo, Jack Injuries as well, were both a couple of players here that mightily contributed to them getting in these positions in the first place. Nate Townsend would also get a rushing touchdown, and then Arch Manning, while quite literally commandeering the ship, would keep this tear going by getting a damn 35-yard rushing touchdown on his front to extend this lead and keep the foot on the gas. Now, Marcel Reed in these cases, man, Like, is he a quarterback that may still end up being a Heisman finalist? That's possible, but there is also a possibility of it taking a hit. Because, dude, the fact that when you needed it the most, rather than being able to come up with points, because in this first possession especially, they were driving, they had a chance to respond immediately, get a touchdown, get themselves a chance, at least a chance, to get the ball back and make something happen. Instead, they don't come away with points. And on a first down, you have Michael Taffy pick him off as they are on the 18-yard line of the Longhorns. So in the red zone at this point. Yet you throw this up, and it leads to instant disaster. Now, the Aggies defense did hold up just for Marcel Reed to be picked off again and end off the game, giving the Longhorns a 27-17 win. It's crazy. So I guess I'll get into the numbers and I'll tie it all together. But for Arch Manning, solid all-around game for him, even though the box score will tell you it was a little bit underwhelming. I mean, 179 yards passing, along with 53 rushing yards and the rushing touchdown, passing touchdown, and completing less than 48.3% of his passes. Those aren't necessarily eye-popping, but they got the job done in what was a pretty convincing game, seemingly, for Texas A&M on paper. They did not account for what Texas and their game plan could be. I don't know. They might have sold them a little short. Because, man, they found out quickly. When Trevion Wisner had 19 rushes for 155 yards, and Jack Andrews had 4 receptions for 93 yards, while Ryan Wingo had 4 receptions for 34 yards and a touchdown. As for Texas A&M, Marcel Reed had 180 yards on 62.5% completion and 2 interceptions, while also adding 71 rushing yards on the ground. And Casey Concepcion had 5 receptions for 57 yards, while Mario Craver had 5 receptions for 44 yards. And Merlin Erstrom had 3 receptions for 43 yards in this game. But seriously, like, it changes everything. Texas A&M in this situation would also be out of an opportunity to compete for the conference championship. They'd be out of it, just like that. Now, is that entirely fair? Because to that point, they had beaten every single conference opponent that they had this year. Every single one. So, the jury's still out on that, I would think. But at the same time, they can't overlook you being in the game if you go completely undefeated in SEC play. Unfortunately for them, by dropping this one at the worst possible moment when a 12-0 season was pretty much a half away, you blew it at the worst time. You would hope that doesn't become a trend, though, because it affects them pretty much by not even having a chance to get a bye and be one of the top seeds. To have home field advantage. Well, they'll probably still have home field advantage, I would think, but you don't have that first round bye, so you're going to go right into play for the CFP first round, more likely than not. They're not going to be completely out of the race. That would just be delusional to say, but man, they go in there on a rough note. And as for Texas, like I said, I thought they were out of it. Multiple people thought they were out of it after starting off so lackluster in a way. But as we always say, man, it is about how you finish the deal. And Texas is looking like a team that could be pretty convincing when talking about discussions for who deserves to get in and such. Because to be the only team that knocks off the Texas A&M squad that had their most successful season in ages and was, again, just a few minutes away from having a 12-0 season. Like, that's got to be taken seriously. Say what you want about the team as a whole, but it's like, dude, I mean, that's just not something that can be discounted. That's all I would say. Like, yes, it's a 3-loss team. I get it. I understand. But that's a strong win right there when they needed it the most. And that alone might be enough to save them, but who knows? All right, moving into the Saturday's action and starting out with number 1 Ohio State at number 15 Michigan. Boy, O-H-I-fucking-O, baby. It is over. Oh my goodness. Man. 2,191 days to that fucking point. And it's fucking done. It's finally over for the first time since Ryan Day has been there. Because, mind you, at that point in 2019, Ryan Day was more so, well, I guess, he's just getting in there. I don't think he was the interim at that point. I was about to say that, but then I had to double back, I think. Like, no, not necessarily. Still, they won in convincing fashion then, but it has gone downhill at that point since then. 4 straight losses to Michigan. Even with as great of a resume as Ryan Day has had to start off his career as a coach in the college football circle. You saw how the reactions were following last year's loss. To put the icing on the cake, man, it was bad. Like in any other situation, it probably could be a fireable offense. And many people were going with that logic. But at the same time, again, he's one of the winningest coaches. Or is on pace to be one of the winningest coaches when looking at different trends and milestones that he's already hit in his youthful career, I should say, as a coach. Like, it hasn't been as much time holding the clipboard for the Buckeyes so long like people would think. But 4 straight losses is inexcusable work. It's inexcusable work. And so, literally, the whole time, even in that moment right there, like, whatever you got to do, man, just do it. Win the game. Win the game. And they heard that. Loud and fucking clear. Loud and clear. Of course, the stat line, even a graphic at the end, I should say, put it greatly. Teams that had the advantage in rushing won 23 straight matches in the series. 23 straight. And that would extend to 24. It wasn't looking like that could happen all the way, though. I mean, for Michigan, just have to, I can't discount their entire name like that. That is the team they played. Fair enough. Look, they got a few monster runs to shut out the ball game, though. You know, Justice Haynes was still out for them. Interestingly enough, it's like, damn, that could have given them another element to work with. But they relied mostly on Jordan Marshall and also Cusdell as a backup, along with, you know, at least in a perfect setting, probably being willing to put Bryce Underwood out as a runner, although that didn't happen too much in this game. But essentially, like, you start off the very first play with Marshall getting outside with some great blocking. If I do add that in really quickly, he gets all the way outside for a 36-yard gain. And then you have a flurry of other runs as they continue to work themselves down the field, just ripping off time and getting some massive chunk plays on this Buckeyes defense. Like, at a point early in the second quarter, I believe, they were running for like 8.2 yards per carry. Michigan was, at least. And it felt like it was going to go in their favor. Ohio State wasn't necessarily abandoning the run, but they got themselves in some early situations there that tested them a little bit. It had been the case in pretty much all the matchups to date since this losing streak had begun. Like, Ohio State came into these games with pretty sound rushing attacks, but completely abandoned them when they needed to rely on it. Now, granted, Michigan themselves has had solid defensive units in this time, so it would not prove to be too difficult to get the read on a team that you are going to be so familiar with and stop plays before they even happen. It felt like Michigan was on pace to do the same thing, especially when you consider they literally forced one of the most accurate quarterbacks in the FBS in Sain to instantly throw an interception on the second play of the game with great coverage. Also, now it's going to be the game plan for Michigan. Make them play your style of football, and it had been working for them all four times. All four times. There were points in those games that you could look to and say, damn, they stole momentum away from the team. Even in situations where Ohio State was keeping it close, or they felt as though they had a good counter to their action, was always followed up by something else. Without fail. But after all that got worked out, they found their footing. You have to credit Bo Jackson Jr. in this. Like, his running style, especially in this game, I saw it for real. It worked. It was a little bit unconventional. He just kept keeping a low center of gravity to the ground. And it was also snowing as well, so I don't know if this came with it or not, but he was always intent on protecting the football as well and just using some nimble footwork, some proper balance, and again, that technique to just get a little lower than everybody else to rip off some solid runs and not just go down on first contact. Like, his ability to break tackles wasn't really through power, but it was just constantly getting as low as possible and shedding would-be tacklers off. Mind you, it's snowing out there as well, so all of this looks optically fun, to be honest with you. But that's besides the point. Like, the consistency from him, a true freshman who would not only come into this game and exit it, having 3 straight 100-yard rushing games, but he also became the first true freshman running back since J.K. Dobbins in 2017 to post 100-plus rushing yards in this series. Like, that's insane. It's insane from the man. And he certainly deserves his credit for that. And all of that, even though he is still a byproduct of what I'll touch on later. But what that did so greatly, aside from also having Michigan defenders just do some weird shit. Like, there was this guy, Barham, literally headbutting a ref in his face. Then you had just a number of countless stupid decisions made by them that did work to benefit Ohio State in a few ways. But ultimately, when you can run the football like that, and you can impose your will, you stay out on the field for a lot longer. And not just to go out and call anything. You have a true purpose and a true sense of what it is you're trying to accomplish. And once it gets going, you don't really shy away from it. Michigan would have to adjust. They'd have to. And they allowed the passing game to become a factor through opening up this via the rushing attack. Ohio State's advantage was definitely going to be on the perimeter. That there's no doubt about that. You have the best wide receiver in college football, or as people have said before, the best non-draft eligible wide receiver in the nation. Because Jordan Tyson, maybe people might not consider him to be better, but he is draft eligible at this point. Jeremiah Smith still has to play at least another season before he can enter. Craziness. You have Carnell Tate as well, backing him up. You have Max Clare, top transfer tight end, or one of the top transfer tight ends, along with the aforementioned Jack Andrews in this season. You have Brandon Ennis as a potential slot guy as well. And man, he got some good work in also. Completely opened that up. Whether it was Claire getting some nice yards after the catch on a few short plays, having Sain be willing to throw out of the backfield to Bo Jackson Jr. on multiple occasions as well. Like, Jackson Jr. was doing it all around. And then ultimately, Smith and Tate being able to, at the right time, get over the top of the defense and stretch the field. As Carnell Tate would get another 50-plus yard catch, I believe that's what it went down as. Yeah, another 50-yard touchdown over the middle. You have everybody manned up at that point. He gets a post at an angle. The safety's out of position, and it's smooth sailing from there. Or Jeremiah Smith earlier in the game being able to get out wide on Barry, a dude that had actually been covering well in this game, mind you. Gets over and away from him and into the end zone for a 35-yard touchdown catch on 4th down. Because that right there, it's like, okay, you know, you at that point still had not done much on offense. Like, you were just on pace to settle for another field goal. You got to respect the play call. And granted, this one was a little bit controversial. They thought that he had lost control of the ball and fumbled it just before he could get another foot down inbounds to secure the catch and score. They reviewed it for countless time, and they ended up giving the touchdown to Jeremiah Smith. It's like, I could see why they would go for it. And, I mean, you could make the case for it, but at the same time, would it have completely changed the outcome of this one? I wouldn't argue that, especially with what I'm about to get into. Because I think to tie Michigan into it, I'll be fair. I'm going to be overly biased here. I mean, Michigan's defense, again, in terms of yards per carry, actually kept Ohio State at right around the same rate of yards per carry. But they allowed them also to damn near double their attempts on the ground, which, like, volume and efficiency is going to do the damage here. Not just running it way less and averaging about the same. Like, you can't get that time that it drains off the clock back. And for you to just resort to it 24 times, that's a bit shocking. Like, Michigan, I think, for the first time in a while, got in a case where they allowed Ohio State to dictate control of the game. Like, why, from a Michigan team that, you know, maybe doesn't have the, I don't know, overall, you could argue that Ohio State has more talent, fair enough, but you don't even give anyone really a fair shot. Even with you trying to throw the ball and do something that you are unaccustomed to doing as a unit. Like, their strength is always in their rushing game. And now they are out against an Ohio State team who is more so known for a completely balanced attack. You're trying to go pass for pass with them to try to stretch the field. And promptly in those situations, Bryce Underwood did not have an idea of where he was going or what he was really doing with the football in his hands. There were some tough misses to a couple wide receivers, and he would also have a few good throws in this game. It wasn't all bad for him, but he never truly settled into the moment. Never truly settled in. Now, that's to be expected from a true freshman quarterback, so I can't really give him too much hell for that. A lot of people, though, have resorted to going after Sharon Moore for maybe not opening the playbook up enough to unleash Bryce Underwood as a full threat on the team, I should say. And it's like, I don't know. Like, I don't know about that wholeheartedly. I do agree that having Underwood run the ball 6 times, with him being a legitimate dual threat, is probably a little underwhelming. Like, why is it that Julian Sain ran for more rushing yards? Like, that in and of itself is just crazy to say. So you definitely could have involved Underwood a little more in that aspect. Yes, Ohio State's got the athleticism to match it, but I'm sure there would have been some scenarios where you are able to catch them off guard if you force them to account for Bryce Underwood in space, at the very least. But in terms of slinging the rock, again, that's not their identity. They would like to have been more efficient than just 44.4% from the field like Bryce Underwood had in this game. They'd like to, but they have an understanding of how valuable turnovers are in this game as well. Very rarely do you get situations where you turn the ball over at a high clip in this game and live to tell the tale on the side of victory. It's difficult. I think I could be wrong, but I think one of the sloppier instances in the series was that game in 2016 between the two, I would argue that in that case, that game was very much filled with turnover after turnover and turnover. Yet, somehow, some way, they were able to overcome that. It took them multiple overtimes to do it. So what does that tell you? But yeah, like their rushing attack, as I mentioned beforehand, was fairly solid. But if you get Ohio State to be fooled in some fashion over the top consistently, man, it could make a world of difference. Even if you don't complete every pass, fine. But if you show this squad that you can match them in that aspect of intensity on the outside, then you've got as fair of a chance as anybody else. But as with most teams this season, you just struggle to keep up against a suffocating defense. And Ohio State have been on that all season long. Michigan just happens to be the latest victim in that regard. They were not fooled downfield. Simply put, like they were on pretty much everything. Igbenogany especially would be penalized a few times in this game, which kind of like, damn, he'd been dealing with this last season and he'd actually had a good amount of coverage in this game. You don't want him to revert back to those old habits. You know what I'm saying? Fair enough. What is especially revealing to me for Michigan, though, does kind of have to do with passing. Because even if you just show that you can get this guy the ball, that opens up a whole nother dynamic of your offense. And the fact that Andrew Marsh, the true freshman wide receiver that has had tremendous play for the Wolverines this season, he did not have a single catch in this game. I don't even think a single target. Now, there's no way for me to really look at his play on the field specifically and see what the exact assignment was on him. Maybe you can chalk that up to the Buckeyes doing a great job of guarding him throughout the game. Maybe you can chalk that up to Bryce Underwood dropping back countless times. He was pressured on numerous occasions. And maybe just didn't see him down the field. And there were situations like that. Like he'd opt for the shortest passes imaginable that would still be dropped by some of these running backs somehow. Settle for those and take those checkdowns rather than trying to force the ball over the middle of the field or to the sides. Very much a conservative style of play. Still, when you have a guy that is that explosive and seemingly that fast, once they are able to get the catch and move after it, you do whatever you can to scheme him into the offense. Like, that is something they very much could have used. And it would have been fair game. It's a game of X's and O's. Chess, not checkers. Like, you've got to deploy that if you know that is something that you can rely on. And from my perspective, from the outside looking in, of course, I'm not there in person. I'm not on those sidelines and in those conversations. But it felt like they just did not really trust him at all. And it's like, damn, I get that he is also a true freshman. But geez, like, at least give him a chance. At least give him a shot to make his mark on this game. And he didn't even get that at all. So that ended up being a major crime from this one. But that's before I tie it all in to how tremendous the trenches were for Ohio State and how the will of Michigan was tested. Because more than any other drive in this game, I think this one put it all into perspective and showed you just where Ohio State won this game at. I've been talking for a while about it, fair enough. Again, don't want to be that guy because, there are other games that we're really interested in this week. But, I think I've been saying pretty good stuff. Just, I got to give it its due, right? The offensive line for Ohio State handled a lot of the work here. Now, was Sain clean the entire day? Not necessarily. But they did a much better job as the game waned on of protecting him. The impact really came in the rushing attack. There's just no getting around that. Can't dance around that at all. Clearly, the way they were just able to get out in front of people and just literally push them off, clear up rushing lanes at will, mano a mano, and have these running backs get out in the space they needed for these gaps. It was tremendous work on their part. And it didn't miss a beat with any of the running backs, whether it was West, whether it was Peoples, whether it was Donaldson Jr., and also Jackson Jr., as I mentioned already. They did not skip a fucking beat. Michigan at that point, they would try. They would be able to get a few TFLs in this game. But for the most part, every single time, you just had them falling forward repeatedly. You don't have too many yards or gains that go over 10 yards, but you are constantly falling forward, constantly getting yourself in manageable third down situations, which Michigan also failed to do on their front when it came to protecting Bryce Underwood and also establishing their own will in the rushing attack. They failed to do that. And I don't think any drive put that into perspective quite like this one from Ohio State, which started all the way at the 5-minute and 6-second mark of the third quarter. And you just get run after run after run. You even get Sain scrambling for a run himself. Not worried about making too many explosive plays, but even when you slightly get behind schedule on one play, always managing to get yourself right back into it and get into doing what is your bread and butter at this point. Toting the fucking rock. The clock at this point is bleeding mightily, and we've already taken 5 minutes off as we transfer into the start of the fourth quarter. Ohio State up by 11 at this point, and seemingly trying to put the game away. So you want to talk about a put-away drive? Well, this was it. Now, yes, Michigan, they did hold up to their credit. We'll give them their respect here. That defense, they did not give up a touchdown. They didn't give up a touchdown. Yes, it would still be difficult as a 3-possession ball game, but it was not out of the realm of possibility for them to at least try to do something in the logical sense, I'll say, because I'm going to do that, right? But from a deeper aspect, from the mindset that every single person on that field had, they were done. Out of it. Mentally, psychologically, their will was broken. Why do I say that? Why do I say that about this Wolverines team? You want to know that this drive was a 20-play, 81-yard drive that lasted 11 minutes and 56 seconds of game time. And who the hell knows how much real time elapsed from that 5-minute and 6-second mark in the third quarter to when Michigan actually got the fucking ball back on offense. That shit felt so incredibly long. And while they did hang on in that goal-to-go situation to get the stop, it still took you way too fucking long to get off the field in the right time for snow as well. You're dealing with all these adverse conditions on top of just getting punched in the mouth the whole time. That is your textbook dose of smash mouth football. And it could have had the same effect in terms of the time. Could have had the same effect on those linemen at that point. Yet, what did they do? They went out time and time again, got down in their stances, and blocked their fucking asses off on this drive and over the course of the entire fucking game. I think that drive stands out as the most important one of the game. Because even if Ohio State has the same result and you get down the field, it's like, okay, you're still in a spot where Michigan could, in theory, make a play to get back on the right track. However, with limited time and the sheer willpower that it takes to go out there and establish your presence like that sends a fucking message above all else. And that was a fitting way to end the scoring off there. Like, would it have been better with a touchdown? From a fan perspective, probably. But the length of the drive did just enough irrevocable damage to the players and to the fans there and watching all around. So, Ohio State, to say all that, would win 27-9. Ohio State's defense, not even to really worry about all the numbers, I went through some of the numbers, but they would become the first team since Florida in 1975 to hold 12 opponents, and 12 straight opponents, under 17 points in a single season. And man, oh boy. Okay, so I'm not gonna harp on it too much. But one, they were trying to plant the flag. Yes, they were. Could it have been cool to see them do it? Sure. Did they need to? No. Especially with what happened last year. Covered that extensively. And that had the whole nation talking. You didn't need to get yourself in another situation like that, honestly. Like, they can do whatever they please in terms of trying to protect their logo. At the end of the day. You, ironically enough, played much better defense there than you did as the game continued. But, again, it is what it is. Fair enough. And I mean, hey, as for Ohio State, like, they've already gotten themselves in the CFP off that alone. But they have a chance to now at least secure a potential bye. Because when a truly unstoppable force meets an immovable object, as was stated in the 2023 matchup between the Buckeyes and the Wolverines, then Ohio State is now in a similar 1-2 match at the tail end of a season, dealing with number 2 Indiana in the Big Ten championship game on Saturday. That's going to be a fucking tremendous game, dude. Just that's all I gotta say about it right now to cap it off. I'm not gonna keep on bragging too much, but you know. Fuck Michigan. Fuck that team up north. Go Buckeyes. Go Buckeyes. It's as simple as that. They gave it a good fight for a while, but that drive, man, a fucking 12-minute drive. If I can get on here and state numerous times throughout the season, when there were 90-plus yard drives lasting near 10 minutes, if it's going to be that demoralizing in the pros, you can imagine just how bad that would look in a college setting or a setting in a lower level of the play. It's like there are just not too many situations in which you see a team come back from that. It is strategically hard to do. And again, from a mental standpoint, like, damn, you get punched in the mouth that many fucking times just when you get back up to have a gasp for air. It's wild. It's wild shit that goes on. Okay. Moving on to Vanderbilt, number 14 Vanderbilt at number 19 Tennessee. This one right here, man. So I did watch this one fully, at least. Granted, I was trying to flicker in between a couple of other games that I was not able to watch all that much because of how close this ended up being for a while. But it's so, okay. This game, like, it says a lot about both teams, honestly, and what they've come to do over the course of the season, yeah? It says a lot about the both of them. Slow starts have been very evident, very much existent in Vanderbilt's performance all season long, especially in SEC play. It's been something that they've been trying to fend off for a while, but there's no secret that they have to deal with that consistently. So it was easy for Tennessee to exploit that early on, at least. Like, this pass from Pavia on this first interception is just inexplainable. Like, I think he was trying to have the running back still go further upfield. I don't know if that would have been caught, but it probably would have turned out way better than whatever the hell this was, because he just throws it up there as this running back cuts out to the corner, and it ends up being a weird interception that Tennessee nearly fumbles away, but manages to get back. Anyways. And Tennessee, to their credit, even though this was a tie ball game at halftime, yeah, shows you just how gritty Vanderbilt is as well. We'll get into that in a bit. They had the advantage in the rushing attack. They did. That is Vanderbilt's identity through and through, between what Pavia does, between what Alexander does, between the way they talk about their other running back and Young being a home run hitter. Like, that is Vanderbilt's identity to a T. Tennessee with Bishop running the ball mostly in this one. I know they had Thomas as well, Star Thomas, but I don't know if he's gotten too much work in. Yeah, they only gave him a run in this game. So it's been a while for him, but they were establishing that early and often and just keeping their offense as balanced as possible. It would actually be Staley for Tennessee on the outside doing a lot of the damage earlier on through some shorter plays. But he is a guy that can also go yard himself. The game plan would be to watch Brazel II, of course, as their main guy. But you still can't discount Staley either, Braylon Staley. And he would get them into goal-to-goal territory before Bishop ended up scoring a touchdown. Vanderbilt ultimately did what they were not supposed to do and allowed Brazel II to burn the man all the way over the top and get himself a 52-yard touchdown score. It's like, just, that is not something you can give up. They just continued to balance it out, and as I cut the game back on while flickering off of a different channel, man, you had Bishop run for a 35-yard touchdown run. So even though it was close, and that is still just crazy to consider, judging by the fact that Tennessee had been winning the turnover margin convincingly. And he was still in it. Tale of two halves. And overall, a pair of messages to note about both teams. For Vanderbilt, man, they are not a team to be pushed around anymore. They aren't. They aren't. Yes, you got them down early. They made some mistakes, but time after time after time again, they responded. And once they took off, in the third quarter, it was all the Commodores from there. They did not let up. They established their own balance and started establishing their own brand of collective running between the trio of Young, Alexander, and Pavia. It is almost like a relentless nature. You would have Alexander get a 5-yard run, and while they would eventually settle for a field goal, the length of some of these plays and the physical toll that some of them could take just did not matter. The Commodores were that willing to overpower the Vols, Tom and Tom again. I mean, this run right here by Pavia, with some great blocking as well, still has to meet a man through the gap, does it anyway, and gets off the tackle while getting a 24-yard touchdown run in a game in which he was trying to make his own Heisman case, as he was a person listed as a potential candidate and could be a finalist, given the context of the situation. They then proceed to continue to stick it to Tennessee defensively. And I'll get to the side of that in a second. But all it took then after getting the ball back was a 39-yard rushing touchdown from Alexander. And just like that, that was the dagger right there for the Commodores to win it 45-24 and get their first ever 10-win season as a program. In a year that will not be forgotten by those guys. That's exactly why Vanderbilt went ahead and did what they did with Clark Lay, signing him to a 6-year deal. If I didn't mention that already, by the way. But yeah, well deserved for him and well deserved for the team. You know, they after looking as though, hey, you know, they're on the fringe of CFP contention, that maybe this isn't a team we can take too seriously. No, you can certainly take another look at that resume now. They are not to be overlooked. And, it would definitely be a kind of Cinderella story. So, even still, they may still get clowned on, but they are not going to be an easy out if a team does have to face them. I can tell you that right now. Only 12 can get in, but they've got just as good of a chance as anybody else. As for Tennessee in this one, and especially in that second half, tempo worked completely against them. Now, in some cases earlier that worked because they were able to catch Vanderbilt completely off guard and get some huge plays down the field without fail in the first half. In the second half, I don't know what the fuck happened. And at that point, you do have to look at the men leading the ship. Heupel, it's not a head coach, but what exactly are some of the play designs here? And why are we rushing pretty much everything? Why? I don't know what the mindset is going into that. Because if you cool down for even a second, maybe you can restore some rhythm. All it made them do in the second half was just look completely disjointed as a team. You had rushed throws, you had runs not developing right, and being snuffed out by Vanderbilt completely. And then you just get a flurry of underwhelming possessions to top it all off, being unable to convert timely third downs. Just got all out of sorts as a team. And it all comes down to the fact that after that point, where Bishop was having himself a pretty good all-around game, nobody else contributed on the ground. Vanderbilt, this damn team as a whole, just think about this for a second. Looking at net yards, Vanderbilt put up 582 yards as a team, okay? And from the very looks of it, Pavia wasn't really sacked all that much. He wasn't. He was pressured. Let's be fair. But to have just a total sack on him with as much as he moves around is a crime. He also didn't even throw the ball all that much. Meanwhile, you were forced to completely get out of the element of balance because you just could not establish a rushing attack at all. What the fuck is going on with the blocking to where you run for just 86 yards and 2.9 yards per carry and have Aguilar throw 44 times in a game that, with the Vanderbilt of old, sure, you'd be more than fine to throw all over the place and get your cool little 50 bomb as a team. This is not a game against this kind of team that you'd want to do that in. And yet they went for it anyways. And you promptly just got failure after failure after failure. And to think that this was a tied ball game. It was 21-all, and you put up just 3 points in the second half when you absolutely need to, as a team, try to rally back in this one, trying to keep your potential CFP hopes alive, even as a 3-loss team, or at the very worst, play spoiler to an Auburn team a Vanderbilt team, who is fringe for contention, at the very least. And instead, you don't even, make that happen at all, when you absolutely needed to do it the most. And this is the theme of their entire season that I'll cap this off with. You don't close. You do not know how to close at all. We're not even just looking at clutch time here. We are looking at situations like I had went through on multiple times with Tennessee in the fucking Alabama game and with Tennessee in the fucking Georgia game. Without fail, multiple situations in halves, even Oklahoma as well, in a row. Multiple situations where at the end of halves, you are doing something in some way to self-sabotage your momentum in the game. And while it looks like a lost opportunity to go up big at a specific point in a game, also just put teams away. Put teams out of fucking opportunities to make comebacks. You don't do it. That was a theme in the Georgia game. We remember that, and I covered it. You played around with calling a timeout for that damn long, and it got your kicker nervous, and he missed a field goal or a fucking pick six at halftime, essentially, of the Alabama game that you never came back from. Or this Oklahoma game. You never came back from it. You got close, but you also had countless fucking turnovers there and a different pick six at halftime. Damn near. Now, yes, this was a shootout, but this was no different. You went radio silent for the entire second half as your entire offense proceeded to cool down after your very first drive ending in a mere field goal. Well, yeah, no, you went 3-0 on this first drive, and you only had a fucking field goal drive to start off the fourth quarter as a response. What? I guess it was still a 7-point ball game at that time, but damn. That was all you had to show for it. In one of the biggest games you could have asked for to end off your season. Again, at least to play spoiler if you still aren't considered for a CFP nod. Fine. And you don't even accomplish either thing. Getting beaten 45-24 like this. While just getting punked. In a case where all you really have to do is put up a fight. Like, Vanderbilt was simply not going to go away. So, that might put all of that talk to rest. But keep pace with them. That's what you've been trying to do before. And you let that completely get away from you. Terrible. Okay. As for the numbers really quickly, Diego Pavia had a combined 433 yards, including 165 rushing, and 2 total touchdowns with 2 interceptions on 64.3% completion from the field. Alexander had 10 rushes for 115 yards and 3 scores. Junior Sherrill had 3 receptions for 76 yards. Trey Richardson had 6 receptions for 75 yards, and Eli Stowers had 5 receptions for 64 yards. As for Tennessee, Joe Aguilar had 299 yards on 65.9% completion and a touchdown pass. Deshaun Bishop had 20 rushes for 97 yards and 2 scores. Chris Brownsville II had 6 receptions for 91 yards and a score. Davis had 7 receptions for 85 yards. And Matthews had 6 receptions for 58 yards, while Braylon Staley had 6 receptions for 35 yards. Turrentine on defense also added 10 tackles in this game. So, hey, credit to Vanderbilt getting their stuff in. Like, just truly. Who would have thought that I'd be sitting here saying that? It is wild. I still can't believe it to this point, but you know what? Some point, you got to snap out of it. It is reality. They have a legitimate chance to get themselves a spot. And, even with the loss to Alabama early in the year, and failing to get their revenge there, man, their resume is still pretty well rounded. They make another compelling argument. Yet another one in the SEC, right? Also with Texas. But it's at the end of the day, only 12 can get in. And I guess we're going to hear a lot of interesting rationale surrounding why one team gets in over the other and all that jazz. But, man, still, no matter what happens for Vanderbilt, they're building something there. So, again, you have to credit Clark Lay for turning it around and getting a long-term extension to stay with the team. I'm kind of surprised that didn't talk about that already. Probably shouldn't have. But it makes much better sense to address it now that they've done the thing. And they're just getting started. Alright, to move quickly into a couple other games, because these were also games I was trying to watch fully, and that did not happen. I was only able to watch them in bits. So to start out with, number 6 Oregon at Washington. Again, traditionally a Pac-12 game in the olden days. Oregon, from what it looks like to me, was definitely tested in their rushing attack. I mean, holy shit. 39 rushes for 111 yards for this squad? And a touchdown run from Dante Moore, of all people, while also holding Noah Whittington to 2.8 yards a run with his explosion on cuts. That is wild. Nevertheless, Washington, even with that being said, would not really fare all that well themselves. I don't know. One of the parts of the game that I clicked into, you literally had Williams Jr. get rocked by Thieneman, who was just being a hard hitter, clearly. He got another fucking major hit on a wide receiver down the field that would not even end up standing, but Roebuck still caught it at that point. So that was a good effort play as well. Nevertheless, it's Williams Jr. is probably not going to be able to take those kinds of hits. I don't know, you might want to be careful with that, in all honesty, but okay, fine. So, even with that being said, this was close. With a late touchdown in the first half to Boston. Washington would be within a possession of the Ducks. This could have proved to be a massive upset as well. While it wasn't all pretty for Oregon, they kept a steady hand and they were able to beat Washington anyways with a 26-14 score. You gotta flip it around though, where Oregon struggled, Washington shined, and vice versa, I should say. When it came to throwing the football, it was a struggle. Oregon's secondary was all over it. The Ducks ran laps around the Huskies whenever it came to them trying to stretch the ball down the field. I mean, say what you want about Dante Moore's overall performance, but he was able to do a fine enough job of protecting the football and still making the most of the weapons he had, despite still not having DeCorian Moore back in this game or Gary Bryant Jr. Still getting great contributions from Malik Benson, who would have 105 receiving yards by himself and also a score on 5 catches in this game. And overall, he had 286 passing yards on 69% completion. Meanwhile, for Damon Williams Jr., and he's had a few games like this himself where he'll just completely crater in production. You could argue that's probably a little bit on the offensive line too, because Oregon, similarly to a few teams, man, they just build their trenches all the way the fuck out. So they have a strong defensive line there. Mateo Uiagalelei is still there, and they have Bear Alexander up the middle. I'm sure that over the course of this game, in some fashion, even with a couple plays I watched, one of those guys had a tremendous impact in that given moment. And all of that being taken into account, Jamal Williams Jr. had a rougher day at the office, posting just 129 passing yards with 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions through the air on 50% completion. Tough. No receiver even crossed the 30-yard mark either. So you're trying to get yourself in a battle with that Oregon offense, putting up that lackluster kind of effort. Yeah, good luck with that. It'll keep Oregon at 1 loss, and they will most likely make the CFP as well. I don't see a world in which they don't. Like, they should be all fine, honestly. Like, for their only loss to come against what is a strong Indiana team, like, that's going to speak volumes. They were already high in the rankings, so they aren't really going to drop off a ton, if at all, given that situation. Moving on to Cincinnati at TCU. And while I was initially trying to watch this, I didn't end up watching the full game. And honestly, I didn't have to, given what they would do. But there was also a weather delay for a while. Pushed it back like at least an hour and a half. So that was really interesting. Even with all that being said, I mean, this was just like disaster for Cincinnati, if that makes sense. Complete abject disaster. Like, of course, there's nothing you can do in terms of the weather in this situation. Like, there's nothing you can do. And, I mean, to their credit, like, after the weather delay stopped, they were able, TCU at least, to keep it going on their front. I mean, Payne, in a sequence that I watched of this game, like, you just get right back out on the field, and he didn't waste any time getting 3 good rushes and also a catch out in the backfield for 44 yards down the field before they got a touchdown pass to McAllister. Because, of course, at the very least, Cincinnati had a response in them, but even that still wouldn't serve to be enough. Like, they just got worked as a defense. And they had one of those days offensively where it's like, if we cannot do what we have to do on the ground, we're going to be in trouble. It wasn't even like that fully. They did average 6.1 yards per carry. But they only ran the ball 19 times compared to TCU going for 52 rushes on the day. And putting up more than double the yardage on that front. And through the air, both quarterbacks were slinging. But it just got to a point where Bearcats just stalled out offensively. And a lot of that can be attributed to garbage time. Like, when this was a game, it wasn't even really all that close, to be honest with you. Like, we get all the way to the end of the half, and the Horned Frogs already have themselves a fucking 31-17 lead. That's how bad it got. And then shit got even crazier because, you know, at this point, I had saw that it hit that mark. I didn't have the game on directly, but, you know, okay, I'm trying to watch what's going on in the Vanderbilt-Tennessee game, and I'm just kind of switching it back and forth. As soon as I fucking click on the game again, one of the weirdest sequences happens where you have Joseph Manjack IV getting wide open over the middle and seemingly getting a great amount of yards after the catch without anybody really on his tail. He's not the fastest guy, of course, known for the strong hands, but he's getting very close to scoring. And as he nears the goal line, a Cincy defender actually punches the ball out. So now, at this point, you have a scramble for the ball a few yards away from the end zone. And as it's just rolling all over the place, in and out of possession of a few different players' hands, you get Jordan Dwyer, the TCU wide receiver. He's a few yards back at this point, but he's hustling his ass all the way down the field. And somehow, through all of the madness, he manages to creep in out of nowhere and recover a would-be momentum play and swing for Cincinnati if it went out of bounds as a touchback or they were able to come up with it and steal points away. Dwyer would actually recover it at the 2-yard line and get a touchdown out of this somehow to make this a 21-point ball game. If you're going to, as a team, allow something like that to happen, that game was as good as done right there. Yeah, once this game was back off, TCU did allow a response from the Bearcats, but at the same time, not only did they get the ball right back and score in just a matter of 2 minutes, but they also proceeded to have an 8-minute drive to close out the game. And I think at that point, it got so out of hand that Fox themselves decided to just switch over to different coverage. They might not have had a choice because of how long the game actually ended up being with the weather delay in mind, but at the same time, it wasn't competitive. There was no reason really binding them to keep it on, so they're like, okay, switch to the next game. So, I mean, I guess this little run for TCU was somewhat successful. You know, they knocked off, although you could say Cincinnati entering this game, they were already 7-4 themselves, so they probably didn't stand as much of a chance in terms of contending for a conference title bid. But, I mean, hey, they play spoiler to a couple of seasons at least in between Houston and Cincy in back-to-back weeks. And they end off the season with a better record than Cincinnati, too. So that's really interesting when you think about it. Josh Hoover had 306 passing yards and 4 touchdowns on 86.4% completion and just 3 incompletions on the day. It's an impressive performance from him. That's why he's the quarterback. Like, this is what they got the man to do. It doesn't always go that perfectly, and it almost never will every single game, but you'll take these when you can get them. Jordan Payne, the lead running back for the Horned Frogs, had 26 rushes for 174 yards and 2 scores. Eric McAllister had, Jeremy Payne, jeez. Okay. Jeremy Payne did that for the squad. Meanwhile, Eric McAllister had 8 receptions for 101 yards and a touchdown, while Jordan Dwyer had 3 receptions for 84 yards and 2 touchdowns. Joseph Manjack IV also added 5 receptions for 59 yards and a score. As for the Bearcats, Brendan Sorsby actually had a solid day at the office. 341 yards total and 3 passing touchdowns on 69.7% completion is something that you'd come to expect from the man. Like, these are the types of games that he can put out for a team, but this came in what was far from a winning effort. Like, you lost 45-23, bro. Goddamn. That's crazy. Goody, one of their skill position players had 5 receptions for 67 yards. Royer had 3 receptions for 45. Caldwell had 4 receptions for 42 yards and a touchdown. Allen had 3 receptions for 42 yards and a touchdown. And Jennings had 42 yards and 2 receptions for Cincinnati in this game. That'll do it for all the game action that I watched. And I am going to get into some developments in a second. There were a lot of different hirings and firings. But first, man, there is something on my mind about a couple of games. And while the main one on my mind is going to be addressed later, I just need to harp on West Virginia and Texas Tech really quickly, okay? Because this shit right here, okay? Think about this for West Virginia. It's been a fucking disaster this season. This was supposed to be Rich Rodriguez's redemption in Morgantown. Like, it was literally campaigned as that from the very first press conference. And with his words that he said, and you just get nothing but some of the worst football play from a team in West Virginia in ages. In almost any way you can think of, they've lost football games. You have your blowouts, you have your close losses, and your calling card for this season was you getting revenge on a Pitt team that you still had bad blood with, dating back to both teams' tenure in the Big East, with that classic of a game 18 years ago. That's your calling card? Is getting a win and getting supposed to get back then? You've virtually done nothing else this season, by all regards. But it is senior day. There are still players on this team who will more than likely be moving forward with other ventures. Maybe they may still choose to play football in a higher level like the NFL. But this is going to be the last time representing the Mountaineers in this capacity. And they want to put on a show for their fans. They've been through enough this year. They want to be able to go out there and close out some of their college careers with a victory. And what better way to potentially close out a college career than getting a late season win against a highly touted Texas Tech team standing at a loss at this point, within the top 5 of the overall rankings, AP, CFP poll, and to knock them off in this case could very much hurt their chances. Just a smidge, right? They're still going to be in the conference championship game more likely than not, but you send them in there on a much worse note than they probably would enter in the event of a win. You had the chance to do this. And they didn't even come close. Admittedly, Texas Tech has been the much better team overall this season. And they are a top 5 team in the rankings for a reason. But for the game to go like this, the Red Raiders beating the Mountaineers 49-0. It's just like, what in the absolute fuck? What in the absolute fuck is this? If you are a West Virginia fan, specifically. There are so many issues with this ball club to count. The fact that 4 different quarterbacks, because it was that bad, and granted, the Red Raiders were able to do the same thing. They had their linebacker in Rodriguez, who's been a great defensive player over the year. They had him play quarterback. They were simply trying shit because the game, by that point, had already been done. But for you to have 4 different quarterbacks play and not crack 100 yards, both of those guys threw interceptions in this game, and also 37 rushing yards as a ball club against in a team in Texas Tech, who, I shit you not, had more rushing attempts in 51 than 7 different rushers for Mountaineers had yards total in this damn game. It's embarrassing. Not to mention, one of their wide receivers in Douglas for Texas Tech got nearly as many yards as 8 different receivers on the Mountaineers acquired total throughout this ball game. In 127 for Douglas and 2 scores on 5 catches, while the Mountaineers had a combined 143 yards through there. Like, it's not all about the quarterback, but it does start there. And you literally could not find your footing with any single one of the guys that you put in over the course of the season. That is a fundamental issue. So they have to get back to the drawing board overall, because it's just terrible. Completely. And you'll never be able to live this down. Like, it's so crazy because I think there were multiple statements from Rich Rodriguez talking about how these players needed to be bought in immediately, or they wouldn't really play, essentially, really be looked at as the same. And that's fair, but you are absolutely, like, you fucking lied. You played, bro. You played. You weren't on anything this season. And through every single peak, few aspect of them as there may have been, in Valley in this season, you somehow managed to hit a historical low. This isn't even the first time they've been shut out this season. But we're going to come in, we're going to shock the world, and we're going to win football games. Okay, Rich Rep. So you got to take it back to the fact that, oh boy. Like, terrible. Absolutely terrible. Oh. Well, excuse me. That Utah game was absolutely disastrous, though. I do remember watching that live. I guess, for whatever reason, I just always assumed they got shut out in that game, but no. So this is the culmination of everything, ending in your only shutout of the year. And not just that. You have this going on in senior day. And you'd think for one game, you'd want to get it right. Instead, what Rich Rod and that team decided to put on display was the worst home loss in their school's history, dating all the way back to 1891. Their largest home loss in the stadium for West Virginia, at home, for them, in 134 years. Just think about that for a second. Think about that for just 1 second. Just 1 second. Because we have to do this. We have to do this. No person in this timeline who is currently alive in the world right now, out of all the fucking people we have across the planet, was fucking born 134 years ago. Nobody. So you literally, on a day where you are honoring every single one of your seniors and graduate players, you put on something. I guess it was a show because it is something that absolutely no one has seen before. Nobody. Niggas lied. Talking about West Virginia football was back. And you somehow managed to take everybody back for a fucking trip over a century and 30 plus years ago. How is that for redemption? Quote unquote. Like, no, you cannot live something like that down. It's probably not going to lead to anything, I should say, in the short term for Rodriguez right now, if they really believe in his vision. But I can guarantee you that every single recruit following a game like this is going to have their questions about the man overseeing it all. If this is what the result of all that work put in over spring training, in individual practices throughout the weeks of every single one this season is leading to, a fucking failure of historically bad proportions on a day where so many people are being honored and ending their college football careers in probably time at the fucking school. You go out there and you have it on your helmets, you have it on your jerseys, maybe your pants, maybe other accessories, the fucking logo of the school being represented on you. And you fucking shat on it the entire game by letting this Red Raiders team run and fucking strike all over your defense and overall team. Deservedly, they are not bowl eligible. You need to pack it up and in after some shit like this and get it together to where you can actually be taken seriously again. Because all this shows to an outsider looking in is that you are still so far away from where exactly you need to be as a unit. And rather than play all these games and try to act as though you are so back, you need to actually stop fucking talking and put in the fucking work to get there at every fucking level. Because that is just unacceptable. And by far, on a week where you probably had worse teams by record play football, that was definitely one of the worst performances you could have fucking had on a week like this. I do not believe that, there's a very good chance that they could be rivals, in fact. But no matter what, whether they are rivals or strictly conference opponents, you let a team do this to you. To start off my developments, the only other team that was relatively all right, I'll say, because I'm seeing that Charlotte got shut out too. They're a 1-11 ball club. All right, they had not been relevant for this time. But the only other team in this week to suit up for a full game and get shut out, who was somewhat in West Virginia's ballpark, was none other than Kentucky. And oh my goodness, Kentucky would finally do it because after years of their own bullshit, they would fire Mark Stoops. Now, I've always wondered whether or not he was related to Bob Stoops. There's a good chance that he probably is. That is not a name that you see around all too much. Nevertheless, man, you want to talk about mediocrity. Man, how about an 82-80 career record at Kentucky through his full 13-year tenure there? Like, it was just, it's already been time. Like, we could say, because I do vividly remember that 2021 season, especially, he had 2 10-win seasons, including that. That might have been a little lucky. Okay, that was so far, it's so far out of the norm for them that they've taken steps and steps and steps back from that every single year since then. Between losing both of the bowl games that they qualified for in the 2 years following that, and then not even being bowl eligible for the past 2 seasons. Why did they give him that many chances? I'm not sure. But it runs even deeper there, because by all accounts, Kentucky and Louisville is definitely a strong rivalry. And you let them do what? Not to mention, you had Kentucky's quarterback jawing on the sidelines. Maybe he was illegally hit or something like that. I'm not sure. All I know is that for you to talk all that smack and lose 41-0 against a sworn rival, like, you look like a clown at that point. What are you talking about? Go out on the field and do something that makes them fearful of your team. Who the hell are you trying to buck bat at? You are not scaring anybody. If they already have spotted fucking 35 points on you, you're not scaring anybody. Like, do your job. Do your job. Why are you talking? There's no reason to. How is anybody supposed to take that seriously? Just got to be honest there. So Kentucky, yeah, they are now on a coaching search. I mean, I really don't know what the game plan would be for them, but you got to go pick a direction. It's not going to be easy to find a candidate because, well, we know that their football team is much weaker and their appeal as a squad in football is far worse off than it is for their college basketball teams. So you're not really going to be able to attract a lot of big names. But you have to pick a direction. Either be good enough to legitimately compete in the SEC. It had been multiple years since they'd even won an SEC game before this season. Either get a head coach who you know in a few years' time can elevate to be able to compete in these games, or you need to rebuild the entire thing. Because being stuck in that cycle is just not, it's not fun. It's not. Eastern New Mexico, a D2 school, would hire former Baylor head coach Art Briles. Quick notes about him. He was a person who had been coaching for 13 overall years. He was actually at Houston before this, but managed to find most of his successes Baylor, going 65-37 in that time per college football reference. And a lot of this material is going to be where this comes from. But nevertheless, he was highly successful there. He won 3 bowl games there, and he had 4 10-plus win seasons. So that's pretty solid. the thing with him is that while this is a D2 school and while a lot of things in terms of recruiting may look slightly different there, you're not always going to find a lot of the top names going to these places. That's just how the system is. But nevertheless, things by any capacity you want to look at it through have evolved since 2015. And he has not coached a team in college football since then. I'm not really sure what he's been up to, but that's a long, long time to be away from the game. If he's been keeping up with it in passing, he should be somewhat okay, but there's still going to be a little bit of a growing pain there, I think, because this is a new era. Like 2015 was a Tom for sure, of course. Things have changed a lot since then. Simply put, the game has evolved. You've got to be able to get him on the same page with some of this stuff between NIL and things of that sort. Because these simply were not things that were at least explicitly allowed, I should say. Because illegally, of course, man, that has been going on for the longest time. And that's what ended up leading to a number of different violations for other schools. That's what ended up leading to the initial lawsuit that banned the usage of name, image, and likeness in other forms of college football for such a long time. In college material, period. That was the whole point. So he's got to reestablish himself as a coach who is in with the current time right now. And that could take a lot, but they won't really know until he gets himself down there and starts going to work with the entire unit. North Dakota State would sign Tim Polasek to a 7-year contract extension. That'll keep him there all the way until 2033. And I came across something that mentioned that he has been there as an assistant since 2011 and 2012 and then became a head coach after. North Dakota State is legitimately the Alabama of the FCS. They've never made the decision to elevate to FBS D1 play. I don't know if they ever even plan on doing that. They really just may not care about that a ton. But they have been known to just fucking win FCS championship after FCS championship throughout the decade plus that Polasek has been there. In any label as an assistant or a head coach. They just win all the time. They're legitimately one of the more accomplished college football programs that you'll find. And again, they just happen to be in the FCS. I don't think they're willing to move. And honestly, if you can continue to be in a spot where you are actually getting your hands on some of the better prospects in the nation at times and converting them into NFL prospects. Maybe Carson Wentz hasn't panned out a ton. Maybe Trey Lance hasn't panned out a ton. But to be in that position where you can get yourself in the market for some quality NFL picks across multiple drafts over the decade as well, that adds a little bit of appeal to your program. So why would you want to get out of that? And if they've had all this success, they very much want to keep Polasek as well. This is a mutual thing. Why would you want him to leave that? You're definitely connected with each other at this point. you may as well keep it rolling. Like, there's no need to switch that up. Like, it's been working well enough for this long. So I wouldn't really get that. But that is what's up. Okay, so the Cowboys, Oklahoma State Cowboys, would sign Eric Morris as their next head coach following Mike Gundy's firing earlier in the year. And this is where, to just look at everything as a whole, you would see a lot of group of 6 coaches get their opportunities to elevate into potential Power 4 situations. Like, seriously. Eric Morris had actually been a former player before, as I just came across. And he has been at North Texas for the past 3 years. Most recently, he is having, by far, one of their most, if not their most successful season in program history at an 11-1 record, with a chance to, if all things go according to plan, play for a potential group of 6 spot in the CFP. That's how good they've been. And he hasn't been the only one, but clearly, with him being able to do that in just 3 years' time, that's attracted a good amount of openings from other schools. And honestly, with Eric Morris being in this spot, I'm pretty sure that he would be a fairly young coach too. You know, you had the good times for a while. Yeah, he's sporty. You'd had the good times with Mike Gundy, but again, one of the main things for him was that this entire atmosphere in college football had been shifting along the whole way, and he wasn't really keen or didn't really care all that much to evolve. Well, Morris is right in it. And not only has he embraced it fully, but it has directly led to him being able to lead a hyper-successful North Texas team in the American Conference right now. Would it have been much better for him to stay and try to see it through? Maybe. But Oklahoma State, even if that job hasn't necessarily been talked about with some of the SEC schools opening up, there are going to be tough shoes to fill with Mike Gundy's absence. So it definitely made it one of the more complex jobs to tackle with. Like, there is a high percentage that you're just not going to be up to the task to really make that much of a difference in the direction of the program right now. But in the same vein, Morris has an opportunity to do something tremendously great with an Oklahoma State team that is also trying to reestablish itself and offer a potential start to a new era in Cowboys football. It's been more than 20 years to this point. Like, that change, it's time for it. Morris might not have really been heard about that much before this. But again, like a few other groups of 6 coaches, like, this could be very interesting. It's definitely experimentative. Definitely. But if things go well, like, oh boy. All right. So for the next development here, Colorado State would sign former UConn head coach Jim Mora Jr. Yes, that Jim Mora has a son, as people would probably know at this point. He spent the last 4 seasons at UConn. He was actually at UCLA beforehand, which I wasn't familiar with. But in what has been a weird time, I mean, Connecticut has a football team. They're more known for their basketball prowess. But he has, over the last couple of seasons, he meddled more so in his first couple of years, and he has now put out a consistent bowl-eligible product. They have 9 wins again this season, UConn does, and they did win their bowl game last season against... Because I remember this game, too. They played this in Fenway, and they had played North Carolina. I think this was actually around the time when it was announced they were hiring Bill Belichick, too. So, what do you know? This season would literally have one of their wins be against UConn as well. Well, UNC, I should say. So that's pretty funny when you think about it. But yeah. Like, what can I say? The fact that they have Fagnano out here firing, although I did recently look at his overall logs for his career. Like, dude, I watched a different video at a different point, and somebody said that man needs to just go. And I'm not gonna lie, like, yeah, you've played in college football for long enough. You just gotta go, bro. After that, they have a solid roster. And with them performing like this, I don't know how many eyes it would really catch. Like, UConn's not really a well-renowned team in the college football space, but it definitely raised some eyebrows, you could say. And one of those happened to be from a Colorado State team that has been on the downturn. You know, they would probably be a school fit to at least just be a relevant program. And Jim Mora Jr. can at the very least do that. You aren't necessarily looking for him to make you a contender, even though in 2013 and 2014 with UCLA, he had back-to-back 10-win seasons. You aren't necessarily looking for that right now. You need to kind of reassert yourself. I'm pretty sure that Colorado State is, like, hold on, I can check because from my understanding, they are reforming the Pac-12 in a way, and unless I'm tripping, Colorado State football, or at least a few of their sports programs, happen to be one of those. Unless I'm tripping. Let me see. Yeah, Pac-12. Right. They will end up moving. And with the season over now, I mean, hey, yeah. Right time, honestly, to make a decision like this. Give yourself a fresh start if you can. And moving on to the next development, Mizzou has gone through a lot, but they still do have enough faith in their coach to sign Eli Drinkwitz to a new contract that will offer him a raise in average salary per year. I don't really have a problem with that. He's definitely a solid coach, but they got to figure out what they can do in terms of getting other skill positions on their squad. Because, as I said, like, you had Cody Schrader at that point. You had Ahmad Hardy at this point. You got to be able to build around that. Like, if that is your identity, you have to be able to surround yourself with proper talent in these skill positions. And granted, they did try. You can't control how many injuries they dealt with over the course of the entire year. But even still, they just got whacked in some of these games. Games that they know from years past with Drinkwitz literally leading them to a 10-win season. They can very much hang with the competition. But now it's about taking that next step for Drinkwitz. You know, he needs to be able to get himself in contention. And they actually had a fair shot this season. But you completely crumble as soon as you got the chance and just fizzled out of that conversation immediately. But it has been very great for Drinkwitz overall. I mean, I'm looking at his stuff on the same site at the moment, and I mean, you come from Appalachian State having one of the better seasons in their program's history, 12-1, 19th in the AP poll, and immediately you get a job in the SEC. 46-28 record is pretty good, especially considering that he had been meddling, but you also had the 2020 season, and you can't really put too much stock into that. It was a weird time. Again, I'm going to say this. It was a weird time for everybody. Like, that's not really in anyone's control. But all he's done is be bowl eligible. Yet, at least this was and should have been a season where you take the lead. Like, back-to-back 10-plus win seasons in Mizzou, back-to-back bowl game wins in 2023 and 2024. And then you just completely drop down this season. You don't want to start trending in the wrong direction if you're Drinkwitz while signing this extension. But I mean, as long as they continue to compete, like that's what it is. You gotta compete more often than not. Like in one-score games especially, they may not go your way all the time, but you have to at least be in the game. And from there, one of the other stuff may be able to figure itself out. They've got to seize that opportunity. Because if they continue to take a slide like this, there aren't going to be too many chances left for them to salvage anything. I will say that. All right, Stanford would hire Tavita Pritchard. He was actually a former quarterback for the program. And I don't believe that he's been a coach before. He has been an assistant in the NFL as a quarterbacks coach for, I believe, let me make sure about this. Yeah, quarterbacks coach for the Commanders at this point. But outside of that, no real experience. He knows the program, so there's that. But even though playing the position is going to be a lot different than coaching an entire team, it's worth noting that this man's college career, it was just, I don't know. I'll just read this off and, I guess, could see what you think about it. 15 total touchdowns and 24 total interceptions across 4 seasons of play. Now, some of that is injuries. He did play in just 5 games as both a redshirt sophomore, or true sophomore at that time, and then as a senior. Fair enough. But still, that just looks tremendously bad. It really does. And he also completed just 53.9% of his passes. So, that leaves a lot to be desired. Truthfully. But depending on how he can work this, there's a shot for this to work. Like, you have Andrew Luck at the helm as a GM and you have another quarterback who played in that system and is probably an offensive-minded guy there. So, if anything, Stanford is probably just trying to set up a lane for them to succeed and overcome their troubles at the quarterback position by getting in a new guy that can learn. Obviously has the skill, has the potential, but can learn from guys who were in that program as players before. More so luck than Pritchard. But from working on the sidelines, Pritchard at least, even if he was not always executing, like he's going to have an idea of what he's talking about and what he's trying to scheme up, you would think. I mean, you saw the success he had with Jaden Daniels last season. And yes, it's been a little haywire with Jaden Daniels being hurt this year. It's definitely been limited with the Commanders just getting dunked on in a few of these games this year. But, you know, like, there's certainly a chance for this. It's not completely something that should be brushed aside. We get into even more group of six material here, as Florida would hire former head coach of Tulane, Jon Sumrall, and would also sign him to a $6 million deal at the same time. In tandem with that, per multiple reports and per Jeff Darlington as well, he was told that they also signed former NFL front office man Dave Caldwell as a GM, most notably known for his time with the Jags. For Sumrall, Tulane is yet another group of six team this season who seemed to have been on an absolute heater. Now, they have gone through their own rough stretches this year, but still, like, Tulane is a team that still has a very real chance of competing for the group of six bid. If you win and lead that space, because they want to give everyone a chance, at 10-2, they are actively fighting for it right now. And at the very top of the group of six, man, there are a lot of compelling cases to be made, even if the competition might not match up with that of the Power 4 schools. But it looks like Sumrall's consistently been on it. I mean, it's all, like, very good from what I'm seeing here. A 42-11 record in 4 years as an overall coach. He led Troy in his first season to a 12-2 record and a bowl game win. And it's been virtually the same thing at Tulane. Now, of course, they haven't played in a bowl game yet. Who knows if they contend as well. That could probably be such game here. But almost all of his seasons have ended with 10-win logs. So even if the goal at Auburn, the goal at Florida would be to contend instantly, you do have to start from somewhere. And at the very least, it's going to take some time for this Florida team to completely reestablish themselves. Sumrall seems promising enough, but of course, the jump from G6 play to SEC play could be a lot to account for. And so he will certainly be tested earlier on. But again, in having that kind of a start to your career, in showing that you can at least put on a great fight with these other teams, that could be enough to survive early. And then, as you build that up over time, then you start to have the resume speak for itself and potentially get in spots where you are able to have other recruits in time be that attracted to the school by virtue of having Sumrall as a coach to work with and alongside with. As for Auburn in this situation, they would also hire another interesting G6 coach in Alex Golesh from South Florida and would sign him to a 6-year deal. Golesh is in similar territory. He has most recently been a coach for USF, but as an assistant, he's been all over the place. And this South Florida team, although they may not be in position to get a group of 6 bid anymore automatically, that loss to Navy tremendously fucked them up. But, man, did they have some tremendous wins this year. I mean, you beat this season ranked Florida. You put on such an interesting display here across the year. And it's like, if that is going on with them, it's like, well, shit. Golesh might actually be up to something. Literally, you give ranked Florida a run for their money. You get a win against ranked Boise State to open up the year. Already, some of the biggest wins they've had. And then not to mention, like, North Texas, who is in a better spot, they got whipped by 27 points by this same South Florida team. Like, it was shocking to see them compete in such a way. And even in that Navy game, it was not easy for them to come up with the win there. They'd been in most of the games outside of their loss to Florida. And he has consistently been bowl eligible with the team. But they've taken a massive jump this season. And they have more wins than his first 2 years there with 9. So they were not a team to be discounted this season. And having that display to look at instills a lot of hope in an Auburn team that is just trying to find themselves taking a new direction. Like, they need it. They have also been a team mired in such mediocrity over the past few seasons. And it's like anything to just get out of this. It's an exciting hire. You may not know that much about Alex Golesh on a larger scale. If you are an SEC fan, that's okay. But with his work there and how it translates, I think he also has connections in some way to Josh Heupel, unless I'm just thinking about somebody totally different. So, I mean, that could make things a little interesting. Truly. And you need some kind of intrigue. Like, at this point. Just something. And then Arkansas would hire another group of 6 coach in Ryan Silverfield from Memphis. And with that, I believe that he would also get a contract here. Safe to say, in his time at Memphis, he's done well for the most part. You can't take much from the 2020 season, of course, but he did get a bowl win there and had 8 wins. It's cooled down for him ever so slightly after that. But since then, I mean, they've logged back-to-back 10-win seasons. It dropped off a little bit this year, but for a while, they were also one of those teams that were in contention for an automatic group of 6 playoff bid and had won 3 straight bowl games as well. There's a good chance that probably does not change this season. And, like, that is a good early resume to have. Arkansas, it's smart for them. It's smart. Again, similar thing. Like, you have been middle of the pack and have been a kind of forgotten piece of the SEC for such a long time that you have to make this kind of shift. You have to. Like, You know that Pittman, at this point, was fired for, like, you couldn't retain him, knowing that you were going to be stuck in that cycle for that long, and you are already understanding of the fact that Petrino is just going to leave anyways, so why even bother putting your faith in him, right? He looks to be a head coach that could have a lot of fire in him. And this is his first major opportunity. So there's a lot of risk and reward that comes with it. But once more, if it hits, I mean, the ramifications of that can be great for an Arkansas team just looking to get back into relevancy as well. But speaking of that, oh my goodness, there is something genuinely interesting about this one. Moving on to some news from the Big Ten, and it would stay in-house, but in a very weird way. Michigan State would fire their head coach, Jonathan Smith, who had originally came from Oregon State. And in light of that, they would hire former Northwestern head coach, Pat Fitzgerald. And I was looking at the headline before clicking on it, and seeing the full story about it. They mentioned that it was a surprise, and hell yeah, I was surprised. Pat Fitzgerald with this Spartans club. That is incredibly interesting. It's one of those weird hires. If you look at his resume, like Fitzgerald, through and through, is a Northwestern guy. Okay, he played there, and he last coached there in 2022 after a 17-year tenure, okay? So let's just get that out of the way. Through and through, full Northwestern supporter. And you somehow convinced the man to come to Michigan State in the first place. That's kind of wild. He has a solid track record in terms of bowl eligibility, I should say. Rarely did you see Northwestern be a 10-win team, but he did have 3 in the 2010s decade seasons with them. He has an overall record of 5-5 in bowl games. And you're making bowl games in at least 10 of the 17 seasons you've been at that program, while arguably having to compete with a ton of different powerhouses in the Big Ten at the time for recruits, for staff members, etc. That's actually pretty impressive when you think about it. 110 and 101 record could be considered being on the verge of mediocrity. Fair enough. But again, for Northwestern standards, that's actually fine for them. They are not as serious enough of a team to be a contender just yet. They're not there. So that was never the MO, but they were definitely good as an overall team to play spoiler for a few different teams in a few different years and get you right on the verge of at least being talked about nationwide. It should be mentioned that there was a lawsuit in which a ton of hazing allegations and essay allegations on top of that were made in 2022, with some of them implicating Pat Fitzgerald as a proprietor of these actions, and with a lot of them occurring on his watch. I was trying to make sure and see whether or not there was a resolution to all this, because from at least what I remember, I didn't think that it had been resolved yet. It looks like a lot of the reports that come from this came from late August, and I guess in that aspect I might have seen it but just completely bypassed it, which is just crazy, because it's like those are major pieces of news right there. But essentially, from what I'm seeing here, per an ESPN report and many others, he and Northwestern settled the lawsuit. Essentially, this stuff I think may have gone down, but Northwestern themselves admitted when it was settled that he did not bear any responsibility for anything that was alleged to have happened during that specific time period. So I guess from that standpoint, he isn't guilty of anything. And perfect for him to get that settled at that time, given the fact that he would now be signed to a fellow Big Ten team just a few short months later, even without him really knowing that at the time. For Michigan State, I think above anything else, what you're going to get from Pat Fitzgerald is just a gritty culture. They've needed that for such a long time. And one that is going to hold every single person in that locker room, and even outside of it in some cases, accountable. This is the same Michigan State club that had to deal with all that from Mel Tucker and is now currently facing violations as a result of every single thing that happened there. With Jonathan Smith this season, it was labeled as an intriguing hire when he came away from Oregon State to this ball club. It has not gone well at all. I don't know what's going on with the on-field production, but even by his first season standards, it was okay until they obviously had to vacate those wins. Nevertheless, it's been downhill this season. You're talking about 4-18. Just some questionable losses throughout the season. Questionable styles of play from multiple positions throughout the year. And just a lack overall of true leadership in those moments. And it did them in. And Pat Fitzgerald is simply not going to allow that to happen. Yes, again, we're coming off of talking about that lawsuit. But on the field, with what can be controlled on the field, like, those slip-ups are not going to be welcomed. Like, and not to mention, too, the experience says a lot as well. Like, this is an established veteran in the game who has gone to war on the field himself. For that program, you're not going to find too many people who can relate to the players in a similar way as a former player themselves who are willing to coach. You can find that in other spaces. But for a man in Fitzgerald who is actively trying to be a football coach, you don't always get that blend. And he can do that on a level like few in the current cycle can. So it's a solid hire. I mean, Tom will tell, because Michigan State has to do their own brand of work to get reestablished here. But it's a solid hire. Nebraska will fire their defensive coordinator in John Butler. And UCLA would hire former James Madison head coach Bob Chesney as their next head coach. Yep. Yeah. Totally. Now, it's not hard to understand just how much of a heater that James Madison has been on ever since they got in D1 football. But obviously, after Cincinnati left to go to Indiana and bought a good amount of players from JMU to Indiana with them, Indiana's had their success. But don't be fooled, because even with Chesney at the helm, the Dukes still have not lost a step. They haven't lost a step. They've just continued to roll. 20-5 in his career as a head coach. And right now, they are 11-1 with a chance themselves to get in as a group of 6 bid. And they have a very real shot of it happening. But one component of that would require Virginia in the ACC championship to lose to a 7-5 Duke team. Yeah, Duke. College football team. Not the college basketball team. The college football team has an opportunity for postseason ball and to play spoiler for a team also looking to get in postseason ball. What in the fuck? Absolute madness there. That's a whole different story and a whole different can of worms. Nevertheless, James Madison, they've just continued to be a powerhouse somewhat. It's crazy. Like, there's a very good chance they win another bowl game this season. And you can't pass up that opportunity. You can't. Like, UCLA has been all over the place. Granted, the player connection with Foster wasn't necessarily the worst idea in the world, but clearly there were some ins and outs that he needed to get down as a coach and just wasn't able to. Maybe it was a lack of skill in that aspect. Like, it just never clicked for him. You gotta try to look at this all the way through if you're the Bruins, though. I mean, it's gonna take a little patience. Like, given how it goes sometimes, Chesney could actually get off to a very hot start with the team. But again, as an overall organization, building it up for the true future, you got to take some time with this if you're them. And I think 5 years is a solid window. They just, gotta go through the full process and see what's going on. But that'll do it for this one. As for the other game, man, oh man. Because I'll get into that later. All it literally takes sometimes is just one unrelated case. And it could lead to so much. So much. If only they came through and they won that game. Who knows what types of conversations we'd be having right now. You know what I'm talking about. See you guys there.